This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. It is July 12th, 2021. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's up?
How's it going, man? Not much. Just glad we finally officially have a coach.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that in just a second. And we are also joined by our producer/content contributor, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's going on, man? How are you?
Gentlemen, doing great. Folks at home, happy to hear from you. Happy to see you. It's going to be a fun show tonight.
So first, before we get started, I want to send our condolences to our Orlando Magic UK friends and our UK listeners. England just lost in the Euro Championship, the final tonight to Italy in penalty kicks, which was pretty rough. I know Luke doesn't really care much about soccer or anything. I don't really watch soccer, but when it's like big international player like the World Cup stuff like that, I get pretty excited. So
I watched the 112th minute to the 120th of extra time, and then and then PKs happened, and I hate PKs, so I boycotted them and I went and got dinner.
You missed
the
I
drama.
get it, but it's like the most exciting part of the.
I hate
the whole
PKs.
game.
The entire game is about teamwork and working together to get a goal, and then all of a sudden these dudes are just scoring goals left and right to decide the game. I just don't get it. I'm not there for the PKs. I don't.
Unfortunately for England, they weren't scoring goals left and right there. They missed the last three
in a row.
Well, wasn't they made the two substitutions for offensive players, attackers in the last minute or two there to try to get them in there for the PKs, and they both missed.
Really controversial, but
pretty.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, UK fans. Sorry we had to bring it up, but again, our thoughts are with you guys. It's rough, and hopefully you guys will be back in the next one. Really quickly, want to remind you guys about our draft party. So July 29th, that is a Thursday. If you guys haven't done so already, the first thing you need to do is go to orlandomagic.com, get your free tickets to the draft party at Amway. But that night before the draft party, we're going to be at Harry Buffalo right there on Church Street from 5 o'clock to 6:45, and then we'll be leaving together, walking over to Amway. We'll all sit together at the Amway and watch the draft, and hopefully we'll talk. We're going to get into our mailbag here. We've got a lot of draft questions, but hopefully that's an exciting night for the Orlando Magic. And Luke alluded to it, but the Magic have officially hired Jamahl Mosley. We had our emergency podcast a few nights ago. Woj, put all the information out. We felt like it was pretty safe to go ahead and talk about that. So, so we officially have a coach. Kevin, how are you feeling about it? We haven't really heard from you on it.
Man, I'm relieved, man. We've talked about this for a while. It kind of dragged on forever and ever and ever and ever. So to finally have a face at the head of the basketball side of things as far as on the court is really exciting, and especially now coming up on the draft. Thinking about the style of coach we may or may not have had. Maybe potentially impacting who we might be picking here the next few weeks. So all that's super interesting, and I'm excited to finally have a guy on board. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go back and listen to that podcast from last week talking about Jamahl Mosley. But yeah, I'm excited.
How do you feel about Mosley in particular?
Yeah, I'm a fan, and it's hard not to be a fan when you listen to all the things that have been said over the last 48 hours or so all over Twitter. Former players of his, former coaches, fellow coaches, assistant coaches, and so forth. I haven't read one guy who worked with him in some capacity say anything negative or bad about him. Everyone's rooting for him. Even Luka Doncic. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to see right there. Him saying, he's really happy for him and stuff. So it's hard not to feel excited. Obviously, he's unproven, never, been a head coach before, but I think he's going to be a great fit for what we need in this next stage of Magic basketball.
Absolutely. So like we talked about, we're going to get into our mailbag episode in just a bit. The Orlando Magic news has kind of slowed down over the last couple of weeks since, now the head coach announcement has been made official, and it sounds like tomorrow, Monday, we're recording this Sunday night, but tomorrow on Monday they're going to have a Zoom, kind of press conference, with Jeff Weltman and Jamahl Mosley to make the announcement official. So be on the lookout for that. I'm sure we're all excited to hear from that. But right now, the Suns and the Bucks are in Milwaukee in the middle of the NBA Finals, Game 3. Luke, you got a score update for us? What's going on there?
I can find it here real quick while we're looking. Yeah, Kevin was saying how weird it feels that there's actually a finals game in Milwaukee.
So weird.
It is very odd, actually, to think about when you really think about that. But also, score update, just for our sake, because by the time this airs, everybody's going to know. But it's Suns up 6 in the second quarter, right at the start of the second quarter, so it's early. They're up 6, but it seems like it's Ayton's game right now, playing through him. And it seems like Giannis is not having a great start, which is not great considering his whole team doesn't really know what a basketball is.
Yeah, especially them having this is their first home game. You know, you'd like to see the home team get off to a good start behind their home fans, and so to have them down early already,
you'd like to not go down 3-0 in the series. So is that what you're
that's
saying?
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you both picked the Suns to win in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I picked 5. I think Luke did too.
Yeah.
Now, was that because you weren't sure about the health of Giannis, or even going in with a healthy Giannis, were you guys still picking the Suns in 5?
Healthy or not, I think I was going with the Suns. I've already said I don't really like the Bucks, and a lot of that isn't necessarily. It's not necessarily like personalities, whatever. I just don't know if Giannis can get it done unless he has a superstar cast around him. You get down to the final minutes of the game, and you just basically fill the paint and dare him to shoot. If he draws a foul, who cares? Because he's gonna take over 10 seconds and miss the free throws anyway. Chris Middleton right now, I mean, like, he was the saving grace, right? Like, closing seconds of a game recently, playoff game recently, Middleton took over. And so for me, it was that the Suns are just also, like, not even really to discredit the Bucks as much as I just did, but to really credit the Suns because of, I mean, I didn't think the Suns were going to get past the first round. So regardless of the injury situation with the Clippers and, was LeBron healthy and, like, all these questions, it doesn't matter. Like, the gauntlet they went through the West is tougher than the Bucks to me. The Bucks did them a favor by beating Brooklyn. I would have much rather seen a Brooklyn-Phoenix matchup, but that would have meant the possibility of Brooklyn winning a championship, and I really didn't want that to happen. So would have been more entertaining than this. I might be wishing that it was Brooklyn just for the entertainment factor if, like, the Suns sweep the series. But, I mean, I think that the way it goes is Phoenix wins tonight, they lose the next game in what feels like a meaningless game, and then they just close out the series at home. So that's what I think. So that's why I think Suns in 5 for sure.
Yeah, I was picking Suns in 5 no matter what. I just feel like it's written in the stars. Chris Paul, going to hoist a Larry O'Brien. I don't know. I feel like they're the team of, I hate that term, but team of destiny. Like, I just feel like they're on a roll, and there's no stopping them right now. So I think they're in good shape.
Well, so because what we saw to Chris Middleton in the Brooklyn series and in the Atlanta series, late in that series, Giannis is hurting. Middleton took over at times in that series. I thought we were going to get a lot more out of Chris Middleton than what we've gotten in this round, which is funny because in the first round, I tweeted out that, I just don't see the Bucks winning a championship unless they have a true closer for, Giannis to play with. Because like Luke said, last couple of minutes, you just pack the paint and you say, okay, Giannis, like, what are you going to do here? If you're going to drive to the rim, we're going to put you on the free throw line, and we all know how that typically ends up. So I picked the Bucks in 7. I thought, with the guys who, we call superstars, at some point, like, they just break through and they end up winning a championship. But I thought this was going to be the year for Giannis if Giannis played, because he had the hyperextension in, the Atlanta series, and then it was, okay, Giannis is done. He's probably tore his ACL. And then they're like, oh, he might play, in Game 6. Or he might play, if there's a Game 7. It's like, okay, so is he actually going to be able to play? And if he's healthy enough, in the first couple of games of this series, he's definitely looked healthy enough. He's been carrying the Bucks, keeping these games close. But Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, like, people want to crap on, Mike Budenholzer as much as they want. And, a lot of that is warranted. But your players have to play well, and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday especially haven't been. So, yeah, right now I'm going Suns. I'm going Suns in 5. It's not looking great for the Bucks. So I'll take the L on that. Happy for Devin Booker and Chris Paul when that comes.
This could age poorly, by the way. This game's not over yet.
Very true. Very true.
It just takes them waking up a little bit. They're only up 6. So.
Well, look, if the Bucks end up winning in 7, I'll be like, look, I told you guys.
Bucks are up 1. Bucks are up 1 right now. So
that escalated quickly because they were
Jonathan's
down
changing
6.
his pick back.
Yeah, I'm changing it back. Bucks in 7. Bucks in 7. No. So, anyways, guys, the first episode that we had Kevin on, about a month and a half ago, I think it was right after Steve Clifford had mutually parted ways with the Magic. And just about, I don't know, a week or so before that, Kevin had joined the team. Kevin reached out to us and, was fans of what we were doing and, just kind of offered his services in any way that he can help. So he's kind of taken over as like the producer role of the podcast. He's putting together our YouTube videos. He's putting out awesome, memes and everything like that. So he's just been doing a phenomenal job. But, Luke and I, we realized that we hadn't really had a real chance to bring Kevin on and kind of get some of his backstory. And the way that the three of us are all kind of connected is pretty crazy. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Kevin, for the listeners who, don't know much about you or might be hearing from you for the first time, like just give them a little bit about your backstory and, your Magic fandom and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. So my Magic fandom dates back actually right back here to 1999. So 99, my family moved to Central Florida. I was 7 years old. And my dad was a big basketball fan, and so we had never lived in an NBA town before. And so naturally we went to, started going to some Magic games, and I just got instantly hooked. It was really cool. The very first game I went to that season was right after the San Antonio Spurs had won their first championship, and that was the first game I went to. I saw the San Antonio Spurs in Orlando, defending champions with David Robinson and Tim Duncan and Mario Elie and all those guys, and of course Greg Popovich. And so to be in the building for that, it was just an electric atmosphere, and I was hooked, at age 7, and kind of hung around with the Magic. At 7, you don't really know a whole lot, but starting in 2004 was really when I really got, just totally all in. That was obviously the year that we drafted Dwight. That offseason, we traded Tracy McGrady, got Steve Francis, on and on and on. And so, but from then on, man, I have bled blue all the way through. I think I said it in the first time I was on, but that's my claim to fame is I haven't missed a game since 2004, which is true. It's very sad, but very true. I've seen them all. Every one that was televised, at least. There's been a few that weren't on TV, back in the 2000s, but I still remember I used to take my VHS tape and I'd record the games on my VCR that I couldn't see live, and then I'd go back and play them back later. And so, total nerd. But yeah, I love this team. I love the franchise, and but yeah, carrying on through the years, I've lived kind of a lot of different places. I don't live in Central Florida anymore. I live up in Georgia, but I come down for every once in a while for any bigger thing. So I'll be at the draft party in a couple weeks. That'll be fun. But yeah, I've been along the journey, the ups and downs ever since. But I think our future's pretty bright, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, some of you guys might have met Kevin. Kevin was actually at the lottery watch party that we had a few weeks ago. So it was awesome getting to meet him in person. And to get even more nerdy with your VCR story, that's how I used to watch Dragon Ball Z back in the day. That was the only way I could watch Dragon Ball Z was to tape it on my VCR and then watch it the next day. So
Yep.
I can definitely appreciate that. But yeah, every game since 2004, that you've seen some things.
Too much.
You've seen
bad.
some things.
But
so.
it's like a runaway freight train at this point. I've gone this far. I just can't take my eyes off it now. I just got to keep going. So it's whatever.
So a really crazy story, kind of the way that we're all sort of connected. So you guys back in Kevin, what was it, 2015 or 2016? Kevin,
2015
used to co-host one of the OG Orlando Magic podcasts, Men in Blue, which back in the day,
right.
Especially around that time, it was rough times for Orlando Magic fans, and most of the content that was out was really, Orlando Magic Daily, that podcast at the time, which is now Locked On Magic, and then for me it was that and Men in Blue, and I remember listening to that. And then not too long after Luke joined the show, him and I were talking one day. And Luke lives in Omaha, Nebraska, for those of you that don't know. And Luke's like, yeah, one of my friends used to, or he knows somebody that used to host another Orlando Magic podcast, the Men in Blue podcast. And I freaked out. I was like, how the heck are you in Omaha, Nebraska, and you met somebody that knows, somebody that used to, host that podcast? So, Luke, I'll kind of let you and Kevin tell the rest of that story there.
Yeah. So essentially, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I, told him that I was, had just started. I think it was when I had just started, maybe, or something like that. Just started, co-hosting, the 6-man show. And he was like, "Oh, sweet." He just nonchalantly was like, "I have a friend who's a Magic fan. He actually had a podcast back like a few years ago." And I was like, "Wait, what?" So I got the name of the podcast. I sent it to Jonathan. He was like, "Dude, I used to listen to that." And so that was crazy in its own in its own right. But then the crazier part is just like how Kevin knows him. His name's Nathan. He'll never listen to this episode, so it doesn't matter. He's not a sports fan.
He hates sports.
His name is Nathan, and ironically, a guy who hates sports, has a connection with two guys that enjoy sports. So, whatever. But yeah, Kevin, I'll let you kind of tell the story real quick here about where you knew Nathan from and all that too.
Yeah, it's just weird. So yeah, I went to college with Nathan in Tennessee. And so, he and I were going to be roommates, and then he went to Australia and blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Are you from Tennessee?
No, I'm from Orlando. Well, not from. I was born in Virginia, but then I grew up in Central Florida.
Wasn't Nathan born in Virginia?
I think so.
He's
from
Virginia.
Always very strange.
Yeah,
he's from Virginia, and they both went to a school in Tennessee and met.
It's weird. But the
and
fact
that's
that
the only connection.
This guy, Nathan, lives in Omaha, Nebraska, hates sports. I mean, hates sports.
Yeah.
And happens to know one guy who's a diehard Magic fan who used to host a podcast, and another guy who's a diehard Magic fan who currently hosts. It's just the smallest world. It's the weirdest thing. But anyway, long story short, got connected with Luke. Actually, Luke and I have played some Xbox together a few months ago, playing with Nathan. Sure. And then, long story short, I was like, well, I've met this guy, Luke. Haven't really met Jonathan, but I've listened to the show. And so I reached out, and it's been a pretty good fit so far, and we're having a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of crazy to have all that connection and then go a step further to the fact that you're now, contributing really heavily to the podcast. And like you said, it's been a good fit so far. It's been pretty awesome. So, yep, that's the crazy story behind Kevin Tucker joining the Six Man Show.
Pretty crazy, small world. All right, guys, let's take a quick break. All right, guys, summer is coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Complement your dad bod or six-pack with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code 6th at manscaped.com. That's code 6th, SIXTH, at manscaped.com.
And it's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. First off, the new Performance Package 4.0 includes a new Lawnmower 4.0. This trimmer is insane, and dare I say, the GOAT of ball trimmers? Yeah, I said it. Did I mention the trimmer is waterproof too? In the shower or in the wild, the Lawnmower 4.0 is the best trimmer for you.
Manscaped is even throwing in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code 6th at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code 6th, SIXTH, at manscaped.com. Escape the shrubs and weeds this summer. Shine with Manscaped. All right, guys, we're back. We're going to get into the mailbag here. So we wanted to get your guys' questions. A lot of you guys sent us some great questions. We're going to dive right into those, try to group those together the best that we could. But this might be a little bit all over the place, but we're going to get right into this. So first up, Carson Tulo wants to know, do you guys think RJ's, in air quotes, growth spurt will affect the front office's approach to the draft? So for those of you that don't know, RJ posted the other day to his Instagram story that apparently he is now 6'7". So listed last year at 6'4". Some people think he might have been 6'5" or 6'6". But end of the day, if RJ is 6'7" now, Luke, I'll ask you first. Do you think that's going to approach the front office's approach to the draft?
Probably not. I mean, essentially RJ's a guard, right? We're very guard heavy. If he slides over to the 3 spot, I still think they're still going to be, I just don't see them looking for a guard regardless. Also, we're talking like growth spurt that obviously RJ feels it gives him an advantage and allows him to play positionless basketball. For all those factors and for all of that, it's a great thing that he's had this growth spurt, regardless of how small or insignificant it feels to a lot of people. So, yeah, I don't know that it really impacts the way that the Magic are going to draft. I don't see how that I just don't think that that's going to be the case at all. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think something like this in my mind doesn't really change who R.J. Hampton is as far as a player. Like, yeah, if he is taller, that's great, especially on the defensive end. But as far as his mindset and his style of play, I'm not really sure that this changes much of anything. So I feel like the front office knows what they have in RJ and what RJ potentially can be. But I don't know if that really affects, where they're going with the draft. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, as far as, if it truly is like a 6'7", like then we're getting into like the Penny Hardaway range
Right.
of like extremely big guards, which would be awesome. But people talking about him, perhaps sliding down to the 3, RJ is still a very slender guy. I'm not going to see him guarding LeBron or Kawhi or Giannis or any of those guys. So I really don't think it changes too much for the Magic. Definitely raises RJ's ceiling a bit if he is going to be that big. But no, I don't see him sliding to the 2 or the 3. Omar OMD, I think he is referring to the trading up in the draft in terms of trading with the Cavs. But would you take on Kevin's Love contract? Again, I think he's talking about in terms of trying to trade up, to the 3 spot in the draft. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, is, depending on what the return is on that. Yeah, if you're talking just trading for Kevin Love in general, no, I don't want Kevin Love. But if we're talking about, like you said, moving up in the draft, I think that's definitely something I'm willing to take on. I think Kevin Love's got 2 years left on his contract, and so, I think that's something, kind of that works with our timeline. I don't see us necessarily competing for a title in the next 2 years, and so if we need to take on a heavier contract like that, take that on our books in order to get a potentially better player in the draft, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that Jonathan and I talked about it, back a couple months ago or something, or a couple weeks maybe. But Jonathan had brought up trade ideas and things like that, and Kevin Love was included in one of them to trade up. Yeah, if Kevin Love is what it takes to get the deal done, if the Cavs are like, we're not doing this trade at all unless you just eat Kevin Love's contract, I'm definitely doing that. There's really no question. I'd eat that contract for sure.
Yeah, for me, it depends on what you're also having to attach to that deal. Because I'm guessing it's some type of mix of 5 and or 8 plus a young guy, and then you're getting 3 and taking Kevin Love back. Like, it just depends on the context of that deal, I guess. But if we're talking about trading up, especially for a guy like Jalen Green, if you've got to take Kevin Love back and the rest of the deal makes sense, then go for it. Next up, Davis Falk. He wants to know, would you trade J.I. 5 and 8 and a future first for Damian Lillard? I'm going to let one of you guys take this. I love Dame, but to me, that's steep.
Here's the number for me. The number is Dame is 30. That's the number that sticks out to me. If we're talking 4 years ago, I might consider it, him being 26. But he's 30. Obviously he's still playing great. But that's steep for a 30-year-old man.
Yeah, I don't find that to be very desirable at all. Like you said, Kevin, if he's younger, sure, but at this point, I don't know. He's going to be 34, making $48 million, while also not fitting your timeline. So, that was the whole thing with Vooch, right? You trade him away, you trade Evan away. And the biggest reason being they just don't fit the timeline. We got a bunch of young guys. We're not trying to win right now, right? So there's no point in trading for Dame. He's 30, so by the time, by the time he's 34 in the last year of his contract, you're competing. And then at that point, let's say you don't win a championship, with Dame on the roster in his last year of his contract, and you just lose him completely. It's like, why were you taking up so much on the payroll for us to do all that? It would be a heinous act for the Magic to trade for Damian Lillard is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think, that might be the kind of offer that Portland would entertain. I think eventually they would probably get an offer that would kind of trump that just a little bit, just because there's still so many unknowns with J.I., with 5 and 8. You don't know who's going to be there. The future first, same thing. And then the thing when it comes to Dame is, by all accounts, if he's requesting a trade from Portland, it's to go somewhere else and win. That seems to be his main issue in Portland is they're not winning. They're not, getting to the finals or winning a championship or anything like that. So if Dame is looking to be traded, I really don't think it's Orlando.
Yeah, and I think Dame is one of those guys that is just it's well known. He's one of the most loyal dudes in the league. Everybody says it, right? And so the fact that Dame is requesting a trade out of Portland because of whatever goes on behind the scenes, plus the fact that they're not winning, and they just like have like reluctancy to switch up his second option in CJ McCollum and see if there's a better fit for Dame. Like regardless of how he calls the shots or anything like that, yeah, there's no way that he would be willing to come to a team. I mean, who's to say he wouldn't be requesting a trade from Orlando within 2 years, even a year? So,
right, yeah, and just my last thought on this is it's kind of what you talked about a little bit, Luke. Lillard coming to Orlando, I think, does make Orlando a playoff team, especially in the East. But our goal is not to be a playoff team. Like Lillard coming to Orlando does not make us a contender, not now or not by the end of his contract. I think it does make us a playoff team, but our goal is higher than that. We think that with the current roster and some of the guys we're going to add over the course of this summer, hopefully we can reach that championship potential.
So Joshua R. wants to know, should the Magic do whatever it takes to move up in the draft or stand pat and keep the 5th and 8th picks? Luke?
I mean, to an extent, yes, but you get me with the operative words, whatever it takes. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, and I don't think that there's anybody that I would trade up for while giving away a ton of young players and picks, because then it feels counterproductive. Like this whole retooling, rebuilding thing that the Magic are in right now with all the young guys, you're not going to trade up to one, right? Unless you're giving up those guys and maybe like a vet or two, like to get a Cade Cunningham. Jalen Green will take less, like the 2 or 3 pick. However, it just seems counterproductive to give up whatever it takes and basically unload your roster that you've worked hard to rebuild and you feel like you're on the right path just to blow that up and take one guy who could be really good. I just think there's a lot of potential on the roster. I don't think I'm willing to do quote unquote whatever it takes.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to what our front office, how they view our current players, right? Do they view that any of our current players have the potential that is equal to or greater than some of the guys you mentioned, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, whoever it might be, right? Some of them might say, Cade Cunningham has a higher ceiling than anyone on our roster, and so maybe they do consider dealing a handful, maybe not a full handful, but a few of our guys plus picks or whatever. So if you're asking me, yeah, I'm with you. Whatever it takes, that's a really broad term and kind of scares the crap out of me. But there are definitely some deals that I would do, that involve some of our young guys, we have a lot of picks in the future to move up. And it also depends, one of the things I've been saying for a while is if we are going to do a deal that moves up, we are not going to see it until draft night, if you ask me. Like, it just depends on how the chips fall, who is drafted when and such. For example, if a Jalen Green is still on the board at 4, do the Magic move up to 4, that kind of thing. It's hard for me to imagine a trade happening anytime before July 29th.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. In terms of do the Magic do whatever it takes, as good as some of these guys in this draft, like the upper echelon of this draft are, like Cade, Jalen, Evan, we've mentioned these names 5 bazillion times by now. I still don't think any of those guys are on the level of like a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant or even maybe like a Luka Doncic. I feel like these guys are franchise altering guys. I don't know if any of them I would call like a generational talent at this point. Now, if this was a LeBron James draft and looking at the roster the Magic have, yes, you do whatever it takes to move up in the draft. I don't think this is that kind of draft, as good as Cade and those other guys might be. So, no, I don't do whatever it takes. I'm willing to do some things to get Jalen Green. I will say that. But I wouldn't say whatever it takes. So, Christopher Johnson wants to know, guys, who are the best fits for Orlando at picks 5 and 8? Ooh. Kevin.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very there's a lot of different ways that this can go. And obviously this is a Captain Obvious statement, but again, it depends on how things fall. Obviously if someone like Jalen Green, which some mocks have Jalen Green falling to 5,
Clowns.
I don't think that's going to happen.
All of
it's
them.
not going to happen, guys.
Clowns.
But if it does, Jalen Green at 5 is just a shoo-in for the Magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a Captain Obvious statement. But as far as some of the guys who are probably going to be around, how I envision this playing out, I envision the 5th pick being guaranteed they're going to take best player available no matter who it is, and I think they're going to swing for the fences. I think they're going to go for someone with really high potential upside. which I guess, a lot of these guys are. But versus where I think at 8, I think we might go with someone maybe a little more established, maybe someone who can do a little more contributing day one. That's how I picture it. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of these other guys. But, yeah, I think at 5 they're looking at the swing for the fences type guys like Scotty Barnes or Kuminga there. Obviously, he's another big name.
Homer.
Okay, whatever. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But then at 8 is someone, potentially more established like a Moses Moody. But, yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling like those picks might shake out.
For those who aren't aware of the dynamic here on the podcast, I'm kind of like the neutral party between Kevin and Luke. So Kevin's a big FSU guy. You guys know, Luke is a UF alum. So I try to be the peacekeeper between these guys at times. That was the Homer joke when you mentioned Scotty Barnes. And we'll talk more about Scotty Barnes in a bit. But, Luke, best fits at 5 and 8.
Kuminga and Moses Moody. That's it.
That's it. Going straight.
Because,
boom.
Okay.
Yeah,
Send tweet.
That's it. Like, Kuminga is the young guy you're talking about, right? One of them, him and Barnes. But for me, it's Kuminga. You swing for the fences with him. You know that it's going to take a few years. We just talked about Dame not fitting the timeline. Kuminga is the exact opposite of that. He is a guy who fits the timeline because the Magic aren't ready to win now. They're ready to develop. By the way, they just brought in Jamahl Mosley to be head coach, who is king of what seems to be developing, and at least contributing with that development. So they brought him in for that. The quotes have been, he's great with development and yada yada. He's perfect. Kuminga's perfect. You also need you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen, for lack of better term, really, because you have so many young guys that you want to develop. So like, Kevin also said, 8th pick, I'm glad we're on the same page as well. So like the 8th pick is going to be that more established guy who can come in day one. His ceiling may not be as high, but his floor is up there, and he's going to contribute in this league for a long time, specifically because of the tools he already possesses. There's not a lot of ifs with his game, and that is Moses Moody for me. So I think that would be great, because you don't want to have 2 super raw top 10 picks on your team when you've already got projects on the roster that go longer than any list of veterans the Magic have had recently. Like there's a ton of projects on this team. So you swing for the fences with a raw prospect at 5, and then you just get the safe guy who's going to contribute on this team 3 years, 4 years down the road. You look to, give him an extension, keep him around for a long time, because he is going to become that glue veteran in the long run. And that's Moses Moody.
Yeah, for me, I'm Kuminga at 5. Like, if we're at 5 and Kuminga is there, I'm definitely that's my pick. I'm not really thinking too much about it. And then at 8, I'm still really split. We've been talking the last couple of weeks. Obviously, I've been a big fan of Moses Moody for what seems like a couple of months now. And then Book Night. Some people are really high on Book Night. Some people are low on Book Night. A lot of people are kind of right in the middle, which is where I think I am. That's like a swing for the fence. But I'm also, we've talked about Alperen Şengün on this podcast a little bit and in our group chat. Kevin's shaking his head. So I've been asking Kevin to watch the film on Şengün. You watched and you're not feeling it.
Nah, bro. I feel like I've seen this tape before. We've seen guys in Europe. I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I think he's going to be good.
You seen
Luka
Doncic?
Is he above those guys? No, he's not Luka Doncic.
He's not Doncic.
No, I'm just saying. You said you've seen a lot of guys overseas. I'm just saying,
right.
You've seen Luka.
I'm saying his film that we've seen, that we saw, that I looked at this weekend. I'm like, I've seen this story before. I've seen it play out with other guys. And again, I'm not saying I think he will be a good NBA player, but is he someone I want to take at 8? No, I don't want to take him at 8 now. Now, if we trade back, which by the way, I think it could be possible that we trade back from 8. I don't want to dismiss that completely for some of the reasons we just mentioned, but yeah, I don't want to take him at 8. No way.
So I don't think I would, if I'm Jeff and I'm sitting there on the phone calling in the pick at 8, I don't think I would have the stones to pick Şengün. Nah. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm man enough to do that. But if the Magic do that, I'll just be sitting in the corner, like rubbing my hands together, kind of excited about that. But for me, it's Kuminga and Moody at 5 and 8. So, and then Peter 59 Pickler wants to know, if the Magic keep 5 and 8, what do you think the rotation will be next season, Luke?
The rotation. So the rotation next
year. For me,
year,
it just like there's so many questions with this because it just depends on who they take.
Right? Yeah, so your eventual roster, like fully healthy. I'm not going to say start of the season because then I'm omitting Markelle, who is inevitably going to kick somebody out of the rotation, right? So,
but not until like January,
Right. but that's the one that I essentially am comfortable giving, I guess, because at that point I would it'd be safe to assume that some guys are just in the rotation. So I really don't know, to be honest. That's my answer. I mean, you have Markelle at the 1. Do you bring in Cole at the 2 and let him play? We saw they can coexist. Are they starting, or when Markelle is back? Is that what happens? And then I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you have Chuma and J.I., and then you have Wendell Carter. And that's some type of mix of your starting 5 at least.
Right. And the other biggest, there's a lot of different things here. The biggest one to me is we've never seen Jamahl Mosley coach. We don't know what kind of team he likes to put out there. We don't like to know the certain types of players he really relies on. Does he rely on veterans? Does he rely on young guys? Does he rely on guys with length? Does he rely on shooters? There's just so many question marks, and we don't have any past history we can go back and look at of Jamahl Mosley coach teams, to go back for reference. There's a lot of question marks, and I hate that we feel like we're kind of skirting around this question, but I don't feel like we have enough information to give, a full, complete answer. At least I don't.
I like the point that you made about the fact that, we don't know really too much about Mosley, because my whole thinking behind this was, okay, if Clifford was here, I have a pretty good feeling on the way that this would play out. Sure. With that being said, even though we don't know that much about Mosley and what he likes to run, all of the moves this front office has made the last 4 months, the hire, all of the mentions around Jamahl Mosley and player development, that tells me we're going to see a lot of young guys next season. So
sure.
Start of the season, I think it's going to be probably something like Cole and RJ. They might start the season together, at the 1 and the 2, and just kind of be interchangeable. And then Chuma, J.I., Wendell Carter, I think those guys are going to be your 3, 4, and 5 from day one, no matter what happens. And then when Markelle comes back, I think he slides right back into the starting point guard role. And then, I don't know, if Cole takes a leap and is the better player, I really don't know. Like, there's so many questions, like you said. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with RJ and Cole going into the next season, because I don't know who's going to be better. At the end of the season, I thought it was Cole, but now just things that I've seen out of RJ, and we've had different interviews and just heard other people talk about him, and now I'm really high on RJ Hampton as well. So I really don't know. But like you said, we don't have a great answer.
Well,
I'm sorry, Peter 59.
Well, and we pretty much
great name though.
Yeah, great name. So we just touched on basically the starting 5, right? If we're really talking about rotation, that's where this gets so freaking tricky. Jonathan, a while ago we did an episode where we went through, okay, who's staying, who's leaving, and who do we have question marks about, what's going to happen. I'm going to just list real quick, because when it comes to rotation, ideally in the NBA you have a rotation of 8 to 10 guys, and some coaches maybe just 9. So basically right now you've got Gary Harris, Markelle Fultz, J.I., Mo, Wendell Carter, Cole, Chuma, MCW, RJ Hampton. I'm not done, and that's 9. Dwayne Bacon, your first pick, your second pick. Probably, I honestly am kind of hopeful for Mo Wagner. And then maybe like 2 free agents, 1 free agent if Ennis is back. So, dude, who is in the rotation? Yeah. Because, we were going to have a hard time with the rotation, even if Steve Clifford was still the head coach. But like Kevin already said, you bring in Jamahl Mosley, who knows what the rotation is going to be?
Yeah.
And to be totally honest, I somehow completely forgot about Gary Harris.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Gary Harris probably starts to start the season.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was going to say.
This all comes down. We don't have enough information to answer this question yet.
I will say
we're not going to know for a while.
This is my opportunity to make a prediction. I do think that Gary Harris. I don't think he's going to be on the roster at the end of the season. He's expiring. I have a feeling he's going to be dealt before the deadline. I think that the writing's on the wall for that. But the biggest reason being is because of the things we just mentioned. He occupies a position where we're going to have a lot of other guys who need more playing time to develop. And especially if we end up drafting, a guy who kind of fills that position with the 8 or even with the 5th, but with the 8th pick, someone like Moses Moody or Book Knight, that's just an obvious sign to me that Gary Harris is going to go on his way out the door, especially because he's an expiring contract, at the end of next season.
All right, we've got a question about another young guy here from Lil 30. So talking about Mo Bamba, being as how he's coming up on his contract here. Do you trade or pay Mo Bamba, Luke? And if you're paying Mo Bamba, how much are you willing to pay?
Oh, boy. I am so glad that I get to start this question out, Jonathan.
Oh, boy.
I just listed that whole, all those guys, right? There seems like there needs to be a little room made on this roster, Jonathan. I think draft night, you deal Mo Bamba. You include you include the mysterious Mo Bamba, who nobody has a clue about. You find one of those teams up there that might be a little high on Mo's development, willing to develop him, and you get rid of Mo Bamba. I don't care who you bring in for that center position. I don't care what it looks like. There are far too many people, and unfortunately, unless Joel Mosley is in love with Mo Bamba, which he could be. He could come in and say, I've seen the film, I've talked to these guys. Mo, you're starting over Wendell Carter. And, front office, do with Wendell Carter whatever you want to do. I hope that's not what they do. But I think Mo Bamba I think he needs another start. His fresh start here, he's going to get a fresh start one of two ways this year. He's going to get a fresh start with either A, Jamahl Mosley, or a fresh start with B, a new team. I think one way you can definitely go is kind of get rid of Mo in a trade that just matches contracts and is just in there to fill it, and with people that aren't turned away by the idea of Mo and who think he's injury riddled, hasn't been given a fair shot, and you get a trade done that way. You get rid of Mo.
So let me just to make sure I understand. You're not just saying I will include Mo on a draft night deal to move up in the draft. You're saying, period, I would trade Mo before the season, period, no matter what. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's a strong take, Luke. That is. I'm not totally against it. My biggest thing is I know this isn't important. Like, we got to be thinking about basketball first, but I think about the locker room, and I think about Mo Bamba and Cole Anthony being super tight. I know that would be probably a hard thing for Cole to deal with, but I know it's a business. These things
welcome to the league, young man.
That's right, the association.
Friends come and go.
That's right. You're right about that. But as far as the question, I'm not in the pay Bamba camp yet. I'm not ready to deal him ASAP unless it was for actually moving up or some other player. I'm not on the. I wouldn't say I'm as far as Luke is. I want to deal him now. I do think I'd love to see him under a new coach, like we talked about with Mosley. I think Mosley can give him maybe a new shot. And also another thing we haven't even talked about is the potential assistant coaches that might come in. You never know what a certain assistant coach might work really well with big men and be able to take his game to another level. So I'm not quite at the trade one, the trade side of Mo Bamba, but I'm definitely not ready to pay him yet.
I'm not, and to be clear, I'm not like hating on Mo Bamba by any means. Just to clarify for anybody that's listening and being like, wow, this is like a Luke hates Mo Bamba segment, because it's not. I was with Jonathan all year this past season saying, why is Cliff not giving Mo a shot? He needs to give Mo a shot. Then Mr. Wendell Carter Jr. walked in the door, and I said, I don't know. I don't know what I think about Mo anymore, right? I mean, Wendell's just more established, and he's the guy that I've said far too many times probably is going to never, wow you, but he's never going to upset you either. He's going to just stay in his lane, do the right thing. Mo is just another guy that needs developing, and he is another spot on the roster. There's so much space, and that's really where I'm coming from. He's the guy I'm willing to part with from that young core, no doubt.
So my thing with Mo is if you're going to move on from Mo, you need to have a backup plan as far as your backup center goes. I don't know about you guys. Yes, I like what I saw out of Wendell, but I'm not totally sold that he is your center of the future for the next 5-10 years. I'm not willing to say that either. I really do want to see Bamba with kind of a new lease on life. Yep. By all accounts, everything that we saw, the way that Clifford would speak about Mo sometimes, just kind of the body language that Mo would have on the bench when he wasn't playing, I don't think they probably had the best relationship. Maybe it wasn't completely toxic, but I definitely don't think Mo was sad to see Clifford go. I'll put it that way. So I am excited to see if Mo has a reinvigoration this season, and maybe Mosley or an assistant coach that he brings on is able to bring Mo along. In terms of paying Mo, definitely not ready to pay Mo. Maybe if he has a good season, maybe you give him like a 1 or a 2 year like prove it deal, and then if you play really well, we'll reward you with an extension after that point. But I'm not willing to trade Mo. But this brings us to our next question from Brave Don't Lose, and I think we've talked about this a little bit now, so I think I could probably have a good idea, at least of how Luke feels. But who's more likely to be traded, Bamba or Wendell? I think we can save us some time here. We'd probably all say that Bamba is more likely to be traded.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
Yep.
Luke,
All
do
right,
you agree?
So we're going to move on. Thank you for the question. Brave don't lose, but we kind of just fleshed that out in the previous question there. And then Ron Lux wants to know, can Kuminga and Bouknight play similarly to what Kuminga and Jalen Green were for G League Ignite this season? Luke.
I saw this question and I don't know. I mean, truthfully, you look at it, you try to compare, because at this point, right, you Kuminga is the common denominator here. You look at Bouknight and Green. To me, obviously, Green is better, but they are both athletes. One shoots the ball better than the other, being Jalen Green more shoots it better than Bouknight. There's a lot of talk about, Bouknight's bad season of shooting being a fluke, having to be the guy. Maybe in the NBA, kind of, if he finds his spots, he gets better shots and, doesn't have so much pressure. So, but I just don't really think, I don't know. I don't really think that they can be exactly what Green and Kuminga were with the Ignite. I just don't see it, because Kuminga has to be Kuminga and Bouknight has to be Jalen Green, and one of those is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think another big kind of asterisk with this question is, if you think that Kuminga and Jalen Green, let me backtrack. Kuminga and Jalen Green were this in the G League. If you think that day one Kuminga and Jalen Green are going to be that in the NBA, that's not how that's going to work. As great as those two guys are, and I think we all talk about how great we think Jalen Green can be and Kuminga as well, they are not going to play as well as they did in the G League in the NBA in day one. That is, I guess, more of a long-term question. But as far as Bouknight, it really comes down, like you said, Luke, to the question, can Bouknight be Jalen Green? And my answer to that is no. Like, I am very high on Bouknight. I think he has a very high ceiling. You don't see that right now. Jalen Green right now is far and away a better basketball player, if you ask me, than Bouknight. But could he someday be as good as Jalen Green? Maybe. That's the biggest question mark there for me. So I don't know. That's a big maybe for me. I'm a big Jalen Green guy. So
same. I will say
I know
that.
you
So
are.
Kuminga and Jalen Green, I think they showed flashes of having good chemistry together, for the G League Ignite. But at the same time, it was mostly like a glorified audition,
Right.
for the NBA. So there were some times where it was like, okay, it's my turn to do this. Okay, it's Jalen's turn, and they kind of went back and forth. So I don't know that I want to see that. If Kuminga and Bouknight Kuminga and Jalen aren't going to end up on the Magic together, that would just be a crazy turn of events. It'd be an all-time great draft for a team, in my opinion. But if we end up with Kuminga and Bouknight, which it's very possible that we do, picking those guys at 5 and 8, it's a tough question, because like Kevin said, they're not going to be quite as good as they were in the G League and the NBA from day one. But can that duo be successful in the NBA eventually? I would say absolutely yes. Next up, we have Dylan Donut 386, awesome username. This is where things are going to get heated, I think. Barnes or Kuminga, and I'll ask Kevin first.
Yeah, so I feel like I messed up earlier. I mistakenly led with Scotty Barnes, and that initially made some people react, thinking I would pick Scotty Barnes over Kuminga. I would not. I do like Scotty Barnes. I think he has a very high ceiling, and the biggest difference I think between Kuminga and Barnes is the level at which they would contribute day one. I think Scotty Barnes, day one, is very good at some things that are very important right now in the NBA. He is a good defender. He has incredible athleticism, and he is a great distributor, passer, visionary of the basketball. I think day one, Scotty Barnes is going to be better, but I would still take Kuminga because of the long term. Like we talked about the swing for the fences. I think his ceiling is probably higher, especially given what our roster is and what it needs. Because Scotty Barnes that's the other thing about Scotty Barnes. He's a ball handler. Like, he loves to be on the ball, loves to run the offense, which I think he's good at. But we've also got other guys on our roster that are good at that as well. So I feel like I need to backtrack. I'm still taking Kuminga if he's there at 5. So there's that.
Luke.
I'm taking Kuminga. We Jonathan and I, we talked about it. We were going over the draft prospects. To me, it's just between the two. I don't really think it's. I don't think it's close. I really don't. I think Kuminga is more of a project, I would say, but I just don't trust Barnes would develop a jump shot in any regard, and who's to say that he's even going to really try to, but I think that he should, obviously. There's just Kuminga, man, like I've said as well, he turns the corner, it's get out of the way. Like, he is just a dude that jumps off the screen to me. Barnes is great, obviously. And I could end up eating my words. Barnes could end up having a better career than Kuminga. That would not shock me at all because Kuminga has a longer way to go developmentally to me than Barnes does. Barnes' body is NBA ready, all that stuff. But I'm just willing to take the chance on Kuminga. I think that if you're willing to do a project, Kuminga is the guy that you do it with. I don't think that, I just don't think it's worth to take it, Barnes over Kuminga.
So in terms of, Barnes versus Kuminga and just kind of what their potential are as prospects, like you mentioned, Kevin, like day one, Scotty Barnes is going to come in and he's going to be able to contribute because he does two things, in my opinion, really, really well. Defends at a high level, and he's a great ball handler, especially in transition. Now, in terms of his prospects of, creating space at the NBA level in the half court, and being able to get to the rim on a consistent basis, that's really where it stops and starts for me with Scotty Barnes. I think Kuminga's got like the quicker first step. He's going to be the guy that, as time goes on, is going to be the guy that could be like the guy on a team. I just don't see Scotty Barnes ever getting to that as the primary ball handler. Like Kuminga, they've got kind of similar body types, bigger guys, both pretty much NBA ready bodies. But Kuminga, again, like in terms of in the half court, I just see him being the guy that is going to be able to develop into a guy just able to get his own shot basically whenever he wants. Scotty Barnes, with the ball in his hands in the half court, just doesn't seem as fluid as we saw flashes out of Kuminga. So I think we're pretty much in unison on that. And I'm sorry that I know the someone that you mentioned at the beginning of your take there, Kevin, was me.
No, it's my fault. I led with him. It's on me. It's on me.
And Luke, is any of your Kuminga over Barnes a little bit of your UF bias?
I didn't want Jonathan Isaac, so we'll just say that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's a yes. All right.
There is bias,
So
but I still do
Burn.
think Kuminga is better.
No, fair enough.
Uh-huh.
So Skinny Burn, we've got another good username here. What free agents would you like to sign this offseason to fill our roster?
You're not filling much.
I think there we go. Luke kind of laid it out perfectly a few minutes ago. You're just going to have so many spots accounted for on this roster. What free agents would I like to sign? Kawhi Leonard. That's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not to mention we don't have a lot of money. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Especially once we add in 2 top 10 picks, their salaries, there's not a lot of money to go around. So not only is there not a lot of spots, there's not a lot of money. We're not going to see any splashes, real splashes in free agency.
I think, and Jonathan, who did we talk about, on an episode some time ago, talking about kind of shooters that were going to be free agents.
Batum, you mentioned Batum.
Yeah, so there's guys that you can add. I wouldn't want to add a young guy. If anything, I just want veteran presence. I think if the Magic kind of shock the fan base and trade Mo Bamba on draft night or any time before the season starts, you could go after a vet who's just on the younger side for being called a vet. Cody Zeller. He's a center who could come in and be an influence in the locker room. He's not bad. We're not asking him to be a superstar. I think he averaged like 11 a game this year. He's 6'11". You've got other options there as well. Kind of looking at the free agency as far as centers go, Rashawn Holmes being one of them, who I love. But Rashawn Holmes is a center and he's 6'10". So there's just question marks there as well. But regardless, whoever you bring in needs to be a veteran, needs to be somebody who's not going to expect to take up all the limelight. I'm not asking Dwight Howard to come in here. I'm not trying to get, any of those guys like that.
Relive the glory days.
I'm good. I am good. I've had enough nostalgia, excitement in the last month of being a Magic fan with Penny Hardaway. I don't want to go with Dwight, but also not to mention the drama that would probably come with Dwight with the media and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think for me, it's just got to be a veteran who's not going to bring up any drama for you. I don't want Enes Kanter. I know he's on that list too as a center. These are all hypotheticals if Mo Bamba were to get traded, though.
Here's one for you. We just had a Mavericks coach leave Dallas, come to Orlando. The Mavericks have a center who's a free agent. Boban.
Boban,
Come to Orlando.
Bobby. Bring back Toby, too.
Yes.
Can you imagine that? It'd be so funny. But
Oh, my gosh. That would just be hilarious. That'd be the new Taco Fall
Dude, that would be
in
so
Orlando.
That'd be
Instead
so
of we
fun.
want taco, they'd be chanting, we want Boban
yeah.
at games. No. The one guy that I've thought about that I really don't think we would have a shot at, but a guy that actually tweeted about the Jamahl Mosley hire today, J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick is the kind of veteran that I think we're talking about that, I mean, I think at this point in his career, he's really just going to be ring chasing.
Yeah.
He had that long streak at the beginning of his career. It was like 14 years where he made the playoffs every single year that, came to an end. But I don't see that happening. But J.J. Redick is a guy that I would absolutely love to have back.
Another
on the
Dallas guy, not for long, but he
Another
was
Dallas
Dallas
guy.
for a little bit this past year,
Exactly. All right. Armin Hammer 3 wants to know, how do you feel about drafting Suggs, and what would it mean for our current guard rotation? Luke.
no, I don't want
boy.
Suggs.
You always got to be
If
disrespectful.
he falls to 5,
I don't.
You
If
still
he
say
falls
no.
to 5, you're taking Barnes over Suggs in that case then? Let me ask you that.
Right.
If Suggs is there at 5 and Kuminga's gone.
I said this, and I'm going to stick with it. I said it months ago. I'm taking Barnes over Suggs. I don't care. I just don't
Disagree
I
with
don't.
that.
I don't want. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't want it. I don't.
You hate the Seminoles that much?
What?
And you're going to
And
take
I'm gonna
Suggs?
take-
I mean, you're going to take Barnes over Suggs?
Yeah, think so.
Billy Donovan would be so disappointed. No, that's fine. I don't know.
I'm not high on Suggs, early in the draft. But if he falls to 5, and it's also hard because, then you've got him going up against Markelle and Cole and RJ, like we've already talked about. All 4 of those guys are going to occupy similar space as far as their game. Obviously, they're all very different. But at the end of the day, as of right now, they're all ball handlers and blah, 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 blah. That'd be hard to pass up if he's there at 5. He's not going to be there at 5. I just can't see that happening. But if he's there at 5, I mean, do I think he's got a higher ceiling than some of those guys that we just mentioned? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be hard to pass up with him on 5.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that Armin Hammer 3 mentioned this. What would it mean for our current guard rotation? Because that's my whole thing.
Right.
Like if you didn't have one of the 3, if you didn't have Markelle or Cole or RJ, like whoever you want to pick, that's fine. If we only had 2 of those guys, I'd be like, okay, I'm all for it. But what it would mean for the current guard rotation, now can those guys play together? Sure. Like can Suggs play with Markelle or with Cole or with RJ? Absolutely. But all 4 of those guys, and at some point you're going to have to pay everybody, I just don't see the front office kind of like moving in that direction. I would have a hard time passing up Suggs at 5. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully if we're staying at 5, I'm hoping.
Sounds like you don't want Suggs at 5.
I don't want Suggs at 5 because I want Kuminga at 5.
Yeah.
But if it's Suggs or Barnes, I'm still gonna go Suggs, and I'll figure out the rest later. In my opinion.
Yep. That's.
I don't know. I think with Suggs, man, he's been primarily a point guard, and that is the position I am most confident in with the Magic right now. And I just don't. I don't want to do that.
That's
I don't.
fair.
I don't want to bring in Suggs just to be a permanent 1, and that's the only place he can fit. So Markelle goes to the 2, where Markelle, in situations where Markelle goes to the 2, I just don't want to do. I don't want to deal with that.
Here's what would happen though. In my mind, if Suggs is somehow miraculously there at 5, that's when the Magic trade down. That's what happens because there is going to be another team that would want Suggs that does need a guard, and that's an opportunity to grab an extra, late round pick or whatever, something like that. It's hard to imagine him being there at 5, and hard to imagine the Magic taking him at 5, but you never know.
Okay, with that caveat, I would be okay with trading down and taking Scotty Barnes at like 6 or 7 if that's feasible.
Depending on what you get back for moving down, but
we'll see.
Yeah.
Up next, Beats by Trey wants to know, do you think Ross will still be on the team after the draft? So I'm going to head this one off. So Kevin sent Luke and I a clip earlier that we've now posted to the social media accounts of Terrence Ross streaming on his Twitch channel. And Kevin, I believe you asked him the question.
Actually, this time it wasn't me. I asked him a couple days ago, but someone else asked it, yeah.
It was someone else, how he felt about the Mosley hire. He said he was excited. He did not seem excited. And other people have commented on that. But Kevin, Do you think Ross is still on the team after draft night?
Draft night, yeah. I don't. Well, I mean, I don't know if we do find a way.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything. That's
true.
That's the true answer.
Nobody knows. But if you're asking my guess,
right?
If we find a way to move up, maybe he's a part of a deal like that. But outside of that, I have a hard time seeing a deal happening for Terrence before the draft. Now, I think maybe later that's entirely possible. But before the draft or during the draft, unless it's some move to move up, yeah, it's hard for me to see that.
I don't think that Terrence Ross would be kept around to be a veteran. I don't think that he fits that mold of veteran leader. I really don't. I think he would be kept around for his incredible ability to catch fire and give the team a spark off the bench, which he did so many times for us last year and the year before. That does prove valuable. But there are some people that I mentioned this a while ago, but I've heard it been brought up since. Is Gary Harris or Moses Moody going to be the new Terrence Ross in terms of provides a spark?
Well, I said that about Moses Moody. I said, you give me some credit. I said that about Moses Moody.
So you said that, but I also have seen it elsewhere as well. There is talk.
They heard it from me,
right?
And they stole my take.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing, though. I don't think Terrence Ross is going to be kept around because the Magic look around. They're like, we need veterans on this team. I think if you're looking at a veteran voice, you're keeping James Ennis instead of Terrence Ross in terms of like who is more of a leader in that veteran stereotypical role. Yeah.
I was going to say, or Michael Carter-Williams too, similar in that vein.
Yeah. As far as leadership goes, yes.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't, and so I guess I didn't really answer the question of do I think he'll be there on draft night. I don't know. I mean, what I jumped in, what Kevin was saying was like, we don't know how draft night's going to go. We don't know how far the front office is willing to go to get the guy they want. This is we've said it 1,000 times. This is a stubborn group, the front office and the people in the front office. They're not going to take a deal that I just really don't, and hopefully knock on wood here, but you're never going to see a trade deal and be like the Magic got fleeced. I don't think because they sold out for the guy that they wanted. That's not going to happen. But in the same respect, and why so many people, I know Jonathan included, are of the belief that the Magic are going to trade up on draft night. I saw people talking about it on Twitter today. They're like, I'm not even scouting these guys, outside of the top 4 because I'm so convinced the Magic are going to trade up in the draft. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. If the Magic can do it, they're going to do it because in the same way they are reluctant to, trade people for, for it to not look like they got fleeced and whatnot. I think it's in the same vein that like they're going to do what they have to get the guy that they are sold on. And that's the reason I think Terrence Ross could be part of a trade deal. Who's to say he's not? But in my opinion, I don't think he will be traded on draft night, but I'm not. If you tell me now, like you can see the future and Terrence Ross is not on the roster come, after the draft, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not really shocked, honestly.
Yeah, and I think another thing you just mentioned, this is the first time that this front office, as stubborn as they've been and all those things you just mentioned, which is totally right, this is the first time the front office has had an arsenal of chips that they can throw in right here as far as like all the draft picks they acquired over the trade deadline. The young guys that we have, right, of course, but they're just like us. They know that there's too many people to sit at the table. If you think about the young guys we have now, the young guys we're going to draft this year, the young guys we're going to draft next year, the young guys on and on and on, all these picks, it doesn't add up. And so they know that at some point, they're going to have to package all this stuff together for something, whether it's to move up in the draft or something, whether it's to do a deal, this year, next year for some superstar to bring in and really solidify and move the team up to the next level, whatever it is. This is the first time this front office has had this many assets that they could use in a potential move like that. So I think it's possible.
So I am going to say yes. I'm fairly certain that Terrence is still going to be on the team after the draft because of the fact that, again, a lot's going to play into who we draft, and if the opportunity is there to move up and you have to include Terrence Ross in that deal, of course you do it, especially if it means getting a guy like Jalen Green who plays a similar position and similar role to what Terrence Ross is going to do. That being said, if you end up with Barnes or Kuminga and Moses Moody or James Bouknight, right? I still think it would behoove the Magic to keep Terrence Ross in the role that he's going to. Everyone knows he's going to be the sixth man, the flamethrower off of the bench. Points are going to have to come from somewhere on this team. Even though the goal is player development, it is still a goal to be competitive and win games. Player development only goes so far until you're not building winning habits, and we saw that in the Rob Hennigan era. With that being said, once Markelle Fultz comes back in January, at that point, in my opinion, Terrence Ross is totally expendable. He's going to want to play for a contender. Contenders are going to be looking to acquire a guy like Terrence Ross at the deadline. It happens every year. And then at the trade deadline, maybe that's when you're able to move on from a guy like Terrence Ross.
Yeah, and especially because his contract is very tradable. This year I think he makes 12.5, and it declines the following year. So
yeah, I
very
think it's
tradable.
Still 13 this year, and then it's like 12.5 the following year, 12.5, and then 11. But you're right, it's going to continue to get cheaper, so it's not going to be a hard contract to move by any means. Cole Chuma wants to know, what happens if we draft Keon Johnson? So I want to say this. I don't think there's any chance the Magic draft Keon Johnson at 5. So
no chance.
In this hypothetical scenario, we are assuming that they're drafting Keon Johnson at 8. And with some of the other candidates, I guess, at that pick, Scotty Barnes or Jonathan Kuminga, in my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense to then draft Keon Johnson at 8. Now, maybe if you're telling me the Magic take Suggs at 5, then maybe Keon Johnson makes sense at 8. But I don't know, Luke. What do you think?
I mean, I've said it. Like, the dude he jumps out. If you watch Keon Johnson tape, defensively, he absolutely jumps out. The notes that I made on our episode a while ago was incredible defender, can finish well, and does possess scoring upside. Averaged 11 a game, 1.1 steals. His lateral quickness is off the charts. He's an athlete. There's so many clips of Keon Johnson defensively beating the guy to the spot after he's already been beat, cutting him off, making him force a bad shot, those types of things, force a turnover. He is one of those guys that Mosley, being a defensive guy, would love a Keon Johnson. That being said, I don't know if I'm there offensively with Keon Johnson, but I wouldn't hate it at 8. But if Moody is on the board and the Magic select Keon Johnson, my TV is going right through the window. So that's how that would play out. Because I do love Moses Moody at 8 that much, and I'm so convinced of him, which means the Magic aren't going to take him. But yeah, I don't hate Keon Johnson at all. I think that I'm going to be rooting for Keon Johnson. I mean, he's a guy who hustles and does all the right things. So a big fan of Keon Johnson, just don't know if I think the Magic would take him.
Yeah, I think for me, there's 3 guys that occupy a similar role, similar position, who could be there at 8. It's Moody, it's Bouknight, and it's Johnson. And for me, he's at the bottom of the list. So I think if all 3 of those guys are available, I think Luke hit it on the head. Great defensively, but with the offensive potential of those other 2 guys, they would be over Johnson to me. So I would be surprised if that happened, but that's just me personally. I'd take the other 2 guys.
And I'm taking Şengün over Keon Johnson. Just throwing that out there. All right, Ricky wants to know, what do you guys think the odds are of Darrell Armstrong coming back to Orlando as an assistant under Jamahl Mosley?
Yeah, I'd say it's impossible to have odds, right? But I would love it.
Percentage chance,
right? Gosh, I mean that's hard to say. He hasn't gone with Rick Carlisle yet, at least not as of this recording. He didn't follow Rick Carlisle to Indiana, so that's potentially a good sign that he might be looking for something else. But I don't know, 50-50. I don't know. It's really hard to put a number on it. I don't know how close they were as far as their relationship and working relationship, but I don't know any Magic fan that wouldn't love to see Darrell Armstrong on the bench.
Yeah, I think with him, I mean, how long has he been in Dallas? A long time.
Wow.
Long time.
I
think
right?
he was there when they won in 2011.
I think he was like 09 or
years.
2010 he got
Right.
there. So, yeah, I mean, he's been there a long time. Maybe this is a guy who just likes where he's at. And
That's true.
Jonathan and I, when we talked about it, what are the chances like Darrell Armstrong just gets thrown a bone and gets an interview, you know? But my thing with him was he's been there so long in the same spot. I either think, A, he loves it there and is just never going to leave, and he's cool with being an assistant. He's lived out glory days on the big stage with being with Orlando and whatnot, but, like, maybe that's the case. Or B, do we have our reservations about Darrell Armstrong as a coach because he hasn't left. He hasn't got either. I've never heard his name in coaching interviews. There's just not much out there about Darrell Armstrong, the coach, to me. I'm sure there's tons of stories of players that love him, and obviously he's a good coach because he's been there forever. But there are some like little red flags about Darrell Armstrong, but not to the point where I wouldn't welcome him as an assistant coach. He's been in the league long enough. He knows the ropes, and Jamahl Mosley knows him. If Jamahl Mosley knows him well enough, and there is a good enough rapport, and he loves him as much as Luka Doncic loves Jamahl Mosley, then maybe we see Darrell Armstrong on the sideline. But I really don't know.
I would say the chances are very low, and I'm only saying that because when this question got brought up to us, I went and searched to see what people in Dallas are saying about Darrell Armstrong, and I've read a couple of reports about the fact that the Mavericks want to keep some level of continuity with the new coaching staff, and Darrell Armstrong is one of the leading candidates of the assistants that would stick around. So because people in Dallas are saying that, and they have a much better handle on that situation than we do, I'm going to say the odds are pretty low. With that being said, I would love to see the original Flash back in Orlando as an assistant coach under Jamahl Mosley. Orlando Magic Hall of Famer on the coaching staff. Like, it doesn't get any better than that.
That would be so fun.
All right, the last question that we have is from Brock Magic 2. He wants us to rank these players in order of star potential. And to me, this is one of the toughest questions that we've had. I think it's a really good question. Jonathan Isaac, Chuma Okeke, Jonathan Kuminga, or Scotty Barnes?
I hate this question because it's so
I hate this question
tough.
too.
I've been dreading this one ever since we saw it.
With me, before we get into this, I want to say we are like literally splitting hairs when it comes to a lot of these guys because, my opinion, I'm going to go ahead and people are going to call me a homer or whatever. That's fine. I'm going to put Jonathan Isaac number 1 because of the fact, and obviously the health is the biggest question with this, and we all know that. But star potential, we already know that Jonathan Isaac is elite at something in the NBA. Jonathan Isaac, I don't care. Anybody can come to a conversation with me. Jonathan Isaac is a top 5 defender in the NBA when he's healthy.
Right.
So, in my opinion, we already know that's what we're getting out of him. Jonathan Isaac ever becomes a 17, 18 point per game scorer, the kid's going to be an all-star. It's just as simple as that, in my opinion. I keep saying that phrase so much, and I'm trying to bring that back. Of course, my opinion. That's what I'm saying. But, so apart from that, it comes down to Chuma, Jonathan Kuminga, and Scotty Barnes for me. Chuma Okeke, I think, has the potential to be really good. People are comparing him. We've heard Terrence Ross and Jonathan Isaac have both compared Chuma Okeke to Kawhi Leonard. Do I think Chuma is going to be Kawhi Leonard? No, because we just haven't seen many guys that have been Kawhi Leonard, right? So I would probably say Jonathan Kuminga would be number 2 for me, just because there's a lot of question marks. He's a guy that has a lot of upside, but there's so many things that we don't know about him. But if we're talking about Jonathan Kuminga versus Scotty Barnes and star potential, we've all already said that we would rather have Jonathan Kuminga. So obviously we think he's got more star potential than Scotty Barnes does.
Yeah.
So the question comes down to Chuma Okeke versus Scotty Barnes, and I don't really know how I feel about that. What do you guys think?
I was going to say, until you just said that. I thought maybe we might all agree that Jonathan Isaac's at the top and Scotty Barnes at the bottom, and it's the middle 2 that we're deciding. But it sounds like you might be deciding between Okeke and Barnes. For me, yeah, Jonathan Isaac's at the top for everything you just mentioned, and especially because we have seen flashes of an offensive game. I was in the building in Indiana when he had his career high, 26, 27, whatever it was. He looked incredible. He was so good, and that night I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. We've got our Kevin Durant. Okay, not Kevin Durant, but you know what I'm saying. He was great. But so yeah, he's at number 1 for me. And it's hard with Kuminga and Barnes because we've never seen them play in the NBA, but also because we've seen them play in 2 very different places, right? We've seen Kuminga play in the G League. We've seen Scotty Barnes play for the mighty Florida State Seminoles, all that kind of stuff. But also, Florida State is known to be, Leonard Hamilton is known to spread the wealth. Like the guys at Florida State right now, they don't play a lot.
Barnes came off the bench, didn't he?
Exactly. He came off the bench, right. And so despite being a top-level recruit and now being a top-level potential draft pick, He came off the bench, but that's just the structure there. So it's hard to judge those guys. But yeah, if I were to do it, just rapid fire, I'd go Jonathan Isaac, I'd go Kuminga, I'd go Okeke, and I'd go Scotty Barnes. It could be totally backwards. It might be totally backwards, but just based on what I've seen so far, that's my order.
So my list is for two reasons. I think there's a genuine possibility that this is the truth. Also, I'm being contrarian. Shocker, I know. Number one, I have Jonathan Kuminga. I just think that he's so young, man. Like, he's, 18? He's not even 19 yet, and he just was averaging 17 and 8 amongst, dudes that have seen it all in the NBA, guys trying to fight for their spot. Like, in one of the most, dog-eat-dog worlds that there are in the G League, because there's so many different careers and walks of life there, he was averaging 17 and 8 as an 18-year-old, and I don't think enough people really have taken a step back to realize how insane that is. It's the first year that it happened. He's one of the first guy. He's a part of the inaugural group of people that are playing in the G League at age 18. And we didn't know how it was going to go, and just the fact that Kuminga showed as many flashes as he was to be that guy, being in the spotlight for those whatever it was, I don't even know, 13 games or something like that in the G League. So there is a lot that could happen with Kuminga. He's, like I said, he's 18. His birthday's in October. He is going to be starting the season just fresh, right? He is so raw, and we've said it 1,000 times. So that's my reason, is we just don't know. And I think the question marks are what's making me put Kuminga 1. And that's what makes this question so difficult, because there are these players are in so many different parts of their career. Chuma just played his first season with the Magic. J.I. is way more established than all of those dudes probably combined. So it's hard not to put J.I. 1, but in this respect, I think I'm going Kuminga, J.I., Chuma, and Scotty Barnes.
Well, so the thing that I'll say, and I guess this isn't totally fair to introduce to this conversation because we're talking about star potential, but I would say that Jonathan Kuminga, if we're talking about who has the both ends of the spectrum, who could be the best, but who also has the lowest floor. You could argue that Jonathan Kuminga has the lowest floor, and we know what Jonathan Isaac and Chuma Okeke, what their floor is, right? So, no, I think you both made great points. I think I'm going to go Jonathan Isaac, Jonathan Kuminga, Chuma, and then Scotty. Again, I think Scotty can be really good, but I think the half-court offense probably will always be a challenge for him, and we saw some real flashes of Chuma, in the half-court.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, Kevin, it's tough to really gauge Scotty Barnes and some of those guys coming out of Florida State because it is such a spread the wealth. Nobody's really going to be the star on this team. We're going to move the ball around. Everybody's going to get a chance to eat. So Scotty Barnes, it's very possible that he's going to come out and kind of show us some things that he didn't show at FSU. I don't know if you guys have watched this yet, but obviously we know Corey Kispert worked out for the Orlando Magic this week. Moses Moody did. Scotty Barnes did. Did you guys watch the Scotty Barnes kind of media availability after that? When they asked him how you think that you did, I didn't get the sense that he was overly confident that he did really well in that workout. Did you guys watch that video, and do you have an opinion one way or the other?
I haven't seen it yet, no. I got to go back and watch that.
You guys go watch that, and then you let me know what you think. It might just be his personality. That's very, very possible. But just his body language and the way that he talked about the workout, I didn't get the sense that it went really, really well. So, but we'll see. But anything that you guys want to add to this conversation before we go ahead and wrap up?
Whew, that was a lot. I say definitely thanks for sending in those questions. I mean, I know we've gone on for a really long time, but there's a lot of really good stuff in there. I think the overarching theme, though, is there's just a lot of just unknowns. Obviously over the next few weeks, we'll have some of those answered through the draft and through some of the assistant coaches that might come on board. But there's a lot of unknowns about this team, but that's part of what makes it fun, who knows how this could go. It could go a lot of different directions.
Yeah, I think that there's so much that got unpacked that this is going to be one of those episodes that, I do this a lot already, and that is referring to old episodes that we've done and that I've mentioned things, and Jonathan's, the conversations we've had. This is going to be one of those episodes that maybe months from now I'm still saying, hey, you remember that mailbag episode that we did a long time ago? one, either we look like geniuses because of this take, or we look like complete idiots.
The more likely one, yeah.
Yes,
The second,
yes,
yeah, the second.
because Terrence Ross is still on the roster. Mo Bamba looks better than Wendell Carter. Like, there's so much stuff that could be happening a few months from now that just makes this episode almost unavoidable to highlight, because there were so many good questions. So yeah, thank you guys for sending those in. We filled a whole episode with your questions, and they were good ones. And specifically, who was the one? Which one of you was the one that asked that last question? Brock Magic 2. Shout out to Brock Magic 2. That's a great question, and something that we were able to kind of deliberate over. And was something that was, we all had kind of different answers in our own respects. So it was good.
So something I wanted to bring up before we go ahead and wrap up here is kind of the theme of this week's episode was getting you guys more involved, the people that are watching, the people that are listening more involved. We batted around a couple of ideas before we settled on the mailbag, and then we put out a video, on our social media, really trying to feel get a feel for the room and what you guys thought. So one of our goals moving forward is going to be to get you guys more involved with the podcast, with the YouTube videos, everything like that. The way that we figured out how to do that, however, requires whoever is going to be essentially calling into the show, you have to be on either a laptop or a PC, and you have to be using Google Chrome to do so. It's basically going to be like a call-in feature to the six-man show. It can be either video or audio, so make sure that you guys are on the lookout for that. I think me, Kevin, Luke, we're going to work together and kind of brainstorm a little bit more about what that's going to look like over the coming weeks. But if you guys don't follow us on social, first of all, go ahead and do that. But just for the listeners, again, that aren't on those platforms, we want to let you guys know that is going to be a possibility in the future. We got a lot of great feedback on that, kind of overwhelmingly so. So we're definitely going to be doing that in the future. So make sure that you guys stay tuned for more details on that. Apart from that, one more time, just wanted to remind you guys about the draft watch party that we're putting together. So July 29th, Thursday, from 5 o'clock to 6:45, we'll be at Harry Buffalo, downtown Orlando. I'll be there. Kevin will be there. If there is some miraculous stroke of luck, maybe Luke will be there, but it doesn't seem likely. Again, he is all the way in Omaha, but we'll definitely miss him if he's not able to make it. But again, 5 o'clock to 6:45 at Harry Buffalo. 6:45, we'll walk over to Amway, and then we'll all go inside, and we're going to do our best to sit together. And hopefully there's a very exciting draft that night.
And be
for
sure
the
to buy
Orlando
your
Magic.
tickets. Buy your tickets right now. If you're going to go to the draft
Well,
party.
they're free, so you don't even have to buy them.
Sorry.
You just got to go
Secure
to the
your
website.
tickets. Secure your tickets.
OrlandoMagic.com. You guys can get your free draft party tickets. Make sure you do that, because you can come hang out with us at Harry Buffalo, but if you don't have the ticket to get in the Amway, we're going to leave you outside. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for the mailbag. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you guys for listening and all the support over the last few weeks. Again, follow us all over the place. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Huge, huge, huge help. But anyways, for Kevin and Luke, this has been Jonathan. You guys are listening to the Six Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to the Six Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. Please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It would really help us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Six Man Show, and like us on Facebook. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic.